Yeah, it's about that time of year again. The holidays are fast approaching, but Christmas came early for your boy in a most unexpected package. I don't think the Twisted and Twilight is the best DLC we've ever had. Has some weird additions, a few undercooked mechanics here and there, but overall I'm fairly happy with it. It's about what I expected. What I didn't know going in was that we get to play with a unit that never really existed in tabletop, never really existed in the source material, yet might end up being my favorite Total War unit in close to 2 decades, dating all the way back to Shogun 1. Yeah, Great Stag Knights might be my favorite unit ever. They are special, and what a time for them to make their grand debut only a few weeks before Saint Nick comes down the chimney. Rudolph, with your horns so red, won't you trample Lumberfoot's dead? For me? Please? These ain't your mama's caribou, bro. These are Dasher and Vixen, Comet and Cupid and Donner and Blitzen, the genocidal reindeer that weigh about as much as a Volkswagen Beetle and hit even harder. If they see an enemy, they will run it over and gore it until it stops moving. There's a lot to love about them. First off, they're monstrous cavalry, which is objectively the coolest unit type in the history of Total War. Like, right off the bat, if you don't agree with that assessment, you are wrong. You're just wrong. No other unit archetype has mechanical demon bull rhinos from hell, Smilodon yeti pigs, stone cobras that spit poison, or bear cavalry. Kinda speaks for itself, and yet somehow, big, testosterone-infused deer are the highlight of this class, at least until we get to Warhammer 3, and yet they still have characteristics that are unique and will help them outshine the heavy metal bruisers coming with the Ogres, Kislev, and Demons of Chaos in Game 3. They are majestic and visually stunning in every single way, but visuals don't mean crap if the unit is ass. So let's break down their battlefield role, what makes them special, unique, and powerful, then show off what they can do in both cinematic and practical environments. And practicality is an important part of Total War. If you can't make it work in a real battle, then it doesn't really matter. So, with the Great Stag Knights, we're looking at a unit that really doesn't have mind-boggling combat stats at all. I mean, 43 melee attack while Frenzy is active is nice, but middling armor and low defense means they are pretty squishy, as you'd expect from a Wood Elf unit. But they make up for that in a multitude of ways. A surprisingly high missile block chance of 55% with their silver shield, Speedy Gonzalez mobility at 90, 20% physical resistance, Vanguard, which you don't see very often for units that are this fast and hit this damn hard, fantastic armor-piercing potential with almost 70 weapon strength and a charge bonus of 76, which is utterly impressive, even amongst monstrous cavalry. So what we have here is the quintessential glass cannon. I mean, this is well and truly the best example of that title in all of Mortal Empires, with the possible exception of Way Watchers. And it makes sense because that is the core identity of the Wood Elves, what they're all about. Hyper-mobile, aggressive can openers with ambush potential that tend to suffer in prolonged melee. Those characteristics define a large portion of the Azrai roster, and they are all doubly true with this unit right here. They will utterly devastate units off the charge, and their theoretical damage threshold is absurd because when they're utilizing that speed to its fullest potential, there are very few enemy types that even have a snowball's chance in hell of catching them. But before we go any further, I need to make one thing clear. These are not world beaters. You cannot send them into whatever unit you want and expect to win, even with a clean charge. They're straight up bad in some matchups. They're extremely expensive at 1500 gold, which means they're a juicy target for damage spells and artillery, and they trade inefficiently into many armored knights. And that's what's beautiful about them. They require tactical thinking, a good positioning, and a fair amount of babysitting to carry a battle, which to be fair is made a hell of a lot easier when they're moving and grooving at 90 speed. But they are not an example of the trend we've seen from so many other DLC units from Creative Assembly, where the new kids on the block hit launch day super overpowered, then get nerfed back into some semblance of normalcy 6 months later. They're actually fairly well balanced right now. They take everything that's cool about Wild Riders, a unit I already adored, and turns those traits up to 11, and yet they do not replace or make redundant their existence. In fact, there are quite a few matchups where they are objectively a worse choice than Wild Riders. They perform a similar role at a different price point, with a specialization that is suited for cracking through heavily armored infantry. So where Wild Riders and the new Glade Rider with Azrai Spear unit are generally better suited for low armor races like the Skaven or Beastmen, the Great Stag Knights are best used against factions like the Warriors of Chaos or the Dwarfs of the Kara's Anchor. And they're going a long way in making what has traditionally been a horrendous matchup that is not fun to watch or play, the Dwarfs vs. Wood Elves scenario, and bringing it back towards some semblance of equilibrium, even if it's never going to be a perfect 5-5 matchup. More on that in a little bit. But what makes this unit really special, what has me really excited about them, is their synergy with charge bonus multipliers. Lest we forget, Mel Gibson, the King of the Woods and Avatar of Karnas, has a super duper cool item called the Horn of the Wild Hunt, which grants 54% charge bonus map wide. Oh, you thought that was good with Wild Riders? You ain't seen nothing yet. What do you get when you take 76 charge bonus with Frenzy active and increase that by 54%? Well, you get somewhere in the ballpark of 113 charge, which means anything on the receiving end is going to die, and die hard like Hans Gruber. Sorry, buddy, we miss you. But yeah, let's see what that looks like in a practical battlefield scenario. We're in the snowy tundra of Iron Mountain Pass, and Cold One Spear Riders have chased the Great Stags out to this flank, supported by 3 units of Chameleon Skinks and a Saurus Spear unit nearby. Now, the Chameleon play is not a terrible idea. Sustained fire from them can put the Hearten on a unit with only 60 armor base, but Great Stags actually have enough speed to catch Chameleons, even when poisoned, and more importantly, they can easily keep away from the Cold One Cav until the moment is right for the pickin'. If they get charged with no spell support, it's a bad trade for the Wood Elves. But the Enigmas of Gairan Zotes are here. They have 2 spells that synergize with Great Stags incredibly well. Flesh to Stone, which doubles their armor from 60 to 120, and Regrowth, which heals them. So using Orion and the Zotes to screen, manage to stuff up both of the Raptor Cav, then activate Horn of the Wild Hunt, sending the Great Stag's charge bonus rocketing into the stratosphere up to 113. Instantly, 2,000 gold off the field, and an additional 2,600 that no longer has any support out here whatsoever. Left adrift in the wind, at the whims of the Great Stags to run them down and destroy them. What do you do when that much of your army just straight up disappears? Not a whole lot, really. I mean, generally speaking, you just kind of lose. So this is a nightmare situation for the Children of the Old Ones, and there's nothing they can do about it. They have lost all mobility out on this flank and have to sack every single unit except for 1 Chameleon Skink, which might be able to retreat to the safety of their battle lines. But at that point, you're 6,000 funds down the drain. It's going to be very hard to come back from a scenario like that one. The cleanup is fairly straightforward from that point on. Most range units are dead. All the cavalry got gored and stomped, which leaves a bunch of immobile infantry at the whims of high AP, 113 charge bonus cav that can cycle them into Age of Sigmar. Little known fact about the end times, Kronkar didn't want to take off in his pyramid spaceship because of the Skaven. No, Last Defender doesn't care about a few rat boys. He saw a unit of Great Stags coming, noped the hell on out of there and went into witness protection as the Seraphon. For another example here, matched up against the Empire, where Knights of the Blazing Sun, Reichsguard, and Demigryphs all represent a large threat to Great Stags in a straight-up fight. But with Vanguard, a bit of baiting from Orion, and that initial D, gas, pedal to the metal, the Deer Train has no brakes. Ambush out of the woods, Empire Knights beaten to hell straight from the word go, and with a 2-minute cooldown, the Horn of the Wild Hunt's going to be ready for the next important engagement as well. Now, the Zotes and the Life Mage are still a big deal here, don't get me wrong. As with any single entity or high-value cav unit, healing and defensive spells are by far the best way to get max value out of them. And they can certainly bail the monstrous cav out of some sticky situations like right here. The Zotes take the initial fight with the Royal Altar of Griffites to get them low, or at the very least make them reconsider their life choices, while the Great Stags finish off the other cav units and look to dive into the rear to shut down the artillery. Flesh to Stone and Regrowth will keep those Zotes in the fight and face-tanking the Demigryphs, and a nicely timed Regrowth from the Empire player will make sure his Demis are able to stay in as well. But with this much monstrous cav completely running over the Empire Knights and then pushing into the rear, things are getting nasty pretty quick. And that ability to rapidly redeploy or escape, about 20% more effective in that capacity than cavalry from other races, makes them super scary, because they don't need much of an opening or a lot of time to get where they need to go. You slip up with your micro, and if they see it, they're on it in a heartbeat. It's not very often you see backline sweepers that also have the punching power of demigriffs, able to shift between trampling skirmishers and slicing open heavily armored knights. Look at these guys right here, how fast they're able to close the gap after killing the cav, then pushing through to the back line to pressure the artillery crews. And another one, like DJ Khaled, demolishes an archer unit off the charge, then they can sandwich the Royal Altdorf Griffites of all units, one of the scariest anti-large presence in the entire game. Just toss a bounce spell their way, they keep their frenzy and immune to psychology, no terror, no problem, the Zotes get the rear charge, and from there the battle spirals completely out of control for the Empire. Not to mention they take no combat penalties in the forest and can phase through trees with woodsmen. So that package, that complete and total package, leads to a cascading effect where the Empire just can't defend their back line at this point, and even their infantry stationed in the woods is getting run down. Check this out. Moving to the back of the map, casual 2,000 damage in 8 seconds with the rear charge into spears. No combat penalties here. Other monstrous cav can't do this. Not even close. And it's fun. I love it. Against the dwarfs, in my opinion, the worst matchup in Mortal Empires to play and watch before this DLC came out, we saw Falcon bust these bad boys out in the Everchosen against Sloxlon Soothsayer at the highest level of competition. Combined with Drycha, a War Dancer Swarm, and some Glade Riders, he made Sooth work overtime trying to protect the McNuggets. Now, he didn't win that battle, but he showed how powerful Great Stags can be and how useful they can be in that matchup. Now, obviously, there are clear-cut issues with the dwarf deployment and army composition here, but it's a nice demonstration of the raw killing power and maneuverability that Great Stags possess. That unique combination of Vanguard deployment for ambushing and stupid high charge bonus and weapon strength makes them a perfect candidate for breaking open dwarf battle lines, while creating space for the Blade Singers, Wildwood Rangers, and Drycha to close the gap and start buzzsawing their way through the front ranks. I still think overall this will be a dwarf-favored matchup, with tons of cheap archers, blasting charges, runes, and organ guns creating kind of a perfect storm that Wood Elves don't like dealing with, but I think it's going to be a lot less lopsided, and perhaps more importantly, a lot more fun to watch and play. So when a new unit is being designed, and it only ever existed as a mount in the source material, it's important for them to fit the thematics of their particular race, to benefit their faction in some tangible way without single-handedly breaking convention or carrying them into the next dimension. It's why I'm not the biggest fan of Zotes or Shard Dragons for the Dawi, because they don't mesh as well with their faction's racial identity as some other alternatives. But for the Great Stag Knights, they fit it like a glove. They look the part, they feel the part, and they are a beautifully designed unit from the ground up. Clear-cut strengths and weaknesses, gleefully fun to use, and possessing of the raw damage output and speed you'd expect from a monstrous cavalry option for the Azrite. Creative Assembly knocked it out of the park with these guys, and probably they're a pretty good picture of what we can expect when Slaanesh makes landfall in Total War Warhammer 3. They're the kind of unit that should serve as a blueprint moving forward for other editions. I'll leave you guys with some satisfying cycle charging of the Beastmen, just to beat them into shape for their hopefully upcoming rework in the next 5 or 6 months. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Wild riders! Hunters! Ride! Quickly! Ride! Swiftly! Fury fire! Swiftly! Wild riders! Wild riders! Ever ready!